A child's development from infancy stage, as we were speaking about earlier this week, is that play is actually really, really important. And a lot of the time when we speak about the intimate relationship between parents and children, there is a lot of focus on the mother and child relationship, which is seen as quite caring, seen as, one of the first interactions of molding, of softness, and of course of learning life lessons. But the bonds formed during playtime for children, especially with their parents, lays a huge foundation for a child's emotional, social, and cognitive development. Women are known to be much softer in play, to do things that are a little bit interactive, and men are known to be a little bit rougher, even when it comes to how they play with their children. How does that impact their development, their emotional growth, but also their cognitive development? We're exploring the deep impacts of father-child play with Julia Mathabathe, a clinical psychologist that has a special needs and interest in children. Thank you so much, Julia, for joining us this morning and for coming through on The Move.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Well, let's speak about playtime. Playtime is all the time, usually, when you have young children or infants, because if they're not sleeping, you want to interact with them and you want to play with them. You can't just leave them there on the corner and let them just be quiet. Children are playing all the time. And before we go into the dynamic of the father and the child, let's speak about the importance of play itself in the child's growth.
So remember when children are young, obviously, in terms of chronological age, right? And psychologically, children learn through play. That's when they get to experience their environment. They get to touch, the senses. That's when they challenge their senses, touching, hearing, seeing, and as a child experience the environment, that's how a child gets to understand or have sorry. And that's when a child gets to have an understanding of what the environment is. Because remember, again, we always say children come to this world as a clean slate. So with time, through experience, through play, in most cases, that's when children get an understanding of what the environment is about through mostly the senses, which are five.
Yeah. That's so powerful that you speak about the senses and also the fact that they come as a clean slate, and that play is the only way that they can navigate getting used to that environment. Yes, there's an emphasis of mother to child bond. How important is the father to child bond?
Yeah. So again, we will refer to in psychology when we speak of attachment theories, in children, which is from the time a child is born. Again, it takes us back to the senses. Psychologically, we will always refer to emotions. Emotions help us mostly with interactions, interpersonal relationships. So in most cases, the primary caregiver would be the mom. But in other instances, you find that, for example, through grief, a mom tragically passes on after giving birth, then in most cases, if the dad is available, the dad will be the primary caregiver. But again, we need to be cognizant of the fact that any person who is, primarily caring for a child would be referred as their primary caregiver. But in terms of fathers, again, it's the same. A child will learn emotions from a primary careggiver, whether it's mommy or daddy.
Sure. So is there is there a difference if you do have two present caregivers in how they relate with the child, or does it just depend on who's more present? And also, if you have an absent father, for instance, or an absent mother, does that actually have any hindrance on how they are socialized?
Ideally, a child would it would be, can I say, nicer for a child's emotional development to be raised in in a home where there's mommy and daddy. Both mom and dad will play different roles. Mommy, like we said, will be mostly nurturing, maybe through breastfeeding and all those things. But the dad's role in this instance will be coming in. The child will learn a different gender or sexual orientation from daddy and mommy in terms of how they relate. So for a child, it does not necessarily have to be only mom or only dad. It can be anyone, like I said, even grandmother can play a role of emotionally helping a child to be available. However, ideally, if daddy is also there, daddy will come in from a male perspective, whether it's a boy child or a girl child. Emotionally, how does a child respond to both, genders? It's nicer like that, but we can't restrict that to saying because now a child was raised in a family where daddy was not present. Now a child will struggle with what our teenagers now call daddy issues. It's not psychologically, it's not always the case. We call object relations. We just need one consistent primary caregiver for the child's emotional needs.
Let's come back to the conversation of play. And, just for the sake of the conversation, I want us to look at this from a perspective where a child probably has both a mother or woman figure and a male figure or a father in their lives. Is there a difference of how, men and women play with their children?
Yes, there is. And mostly we will speak of sexual orientation, whether we know, through, let's say it's toys, the type of toys maybe that the child will mostly choose to play with will help us identify the child's sexual orientation. Meaning, for instance, sometimes we find our girl children, or let's say our boy children, they will mostly play with dolls, they will play with lipstick and handbags and all of that, whilst remember now experiencing their environment. For me, my experience with playing with children is that not just only for emotional well-being, where a child will always sometimes take, violent toys like guns, or if it's two dolls, the dolls will always be fighting. It gives us a sense of the child's possible environment, what's happening at home. But again, the sexual orientation will help us if the child now gets into adolescent age, that sexual the play, the toys that the child would usually choose in playing will now help us understand that, but when this child was about 2 or 3, they would mostly, play with dolls when
Julia,
they were young.
I'm sorry. I want to interject there a little bit because I really want us to concentrate on a particular type of play, right? And I understand you're speaking about toys, and that sometimes can bring in how a child interacts with their toys alone. But I want to bring it back to the interaction between the people themselves, the parent and the child, the father and the child, their interaction in play, not particularly everything else they are playing with.
Okay, so the question is, how does the dad playing with the child
differ?
From the mom? Psychologically, there is no much difference because remember, the child is basically learning the environment. They're taking in everything. So if the mom is a bit harder and the dad is a bit softer, or vice versa, it's about how the child interprets that play. If mommy always comes with cars and they play with cars, and daddy comes with dolls, it's about what makes sense to the child emotionally. So the theme around what they will be playing about, 2, 3, in most cases, cognitively, they won't be able to understand verbally what's going on. But through play, if it's 2 people, say we want to teach the child empathy. If it's 2 dolls, even from a dad, the doll will speak, the other doll will speak. They will hug and say, oh, you look beautiful, or thank you for whatever. And then that is that. But in terms of roles from daddy or mommy in childhood, we're only focusing on the consistency in terms of the presence of the caregiver, depending which will be also age appropriate.
All right, we need to take a break, Julia. Let's come back after the break and continue this particular conversation. I'm really interested to see, there is maybe, I don't know if it's a misconception or what we think, that men tend to be a little bit rougher with the kids in terms of how they would interact and play with them and throw them about, and you see the kids giggling and laughing, and mothers might be a little bit softer and maybe stray away from the more rough kind of play. And I want to see if that is not a misconception, how that would, bring in different elements of cognitive growth for the child. So stay with us. We're speaking about the impact of father-child play with clinical psychologist Julia Mathabathe.
The Midnight Snack, 12 to 3 a.m.
Our fitness coach, her name is Yvonne Dimakato Pasha. How to remain consistent with gyms, Dima, and I'm going to put you on the spot right now. As we are talking, I will send you my picture and I want you to tell me what you think I should work on. Because, you know, when I look at myself, Dima, I think I'm very handsome. I'm so good looking, like, oh my goodness. Like here at Channel Africa where I work, I think I'm one of the most good-looking people ever. Like sometimes when I look at myself in the mirror, I never get used to how good I look. I'm just amazing.
You're okay with the way you're looking. You wish people could run from and now you want to put me on the spot.
Do I need gym?
Yeah. I mean, if you can just consider eating healthy, cutting down a few foodstuffs such as junk.
The Midnight Snack, every Monday, 12 to 3 a.m. with Chanduko Ligege. Step into the heart of the day on the move with Palesa and Benjamin.
22 minutes past 11 o'clock Central African time. This is On the Move right here on Channel Africa. You're with myself, Benjamin Moshatama and Palesa Tau. We're speaking to Julia Mathabathe, clinical psychologist with a special interest in children. And we're looking at this idea of the art of play, but between the father and the child. And I love the fact that, Julia, you are demystifying some of the things that we think that children take from a mother and a father. It's how we all stylize our parenting. Like someone would think, like Palesa was alluding to earlier on, that fathers are more rougher with their kids and mothers are more gentler with their kids. But it depends on that style of parenting. That presence of a father, especially in the playground or in a space whereby they can interact, I'm sure you, as you highlighted, it plays the same position in terms of connectivity and also development. But also, how important is that father figure in a child?
For instance, I'll give an example of a girl child growing in a family where mommy and daddy are present, right? So daddy's role in such a system would be to teach a girl child. I'm making an example, but it will apply both with boys as well.
Sure.
So it will teach a girl child how to relate to male figures generally in their lives. And again, you must remember the age appropriateness when you speak of children. Hence, earlier on, when you speak of play therapy, it would be, small children, infants. So if it's a boy child, the girl child, the dad will basically teach the girl child how to relate to a male. When we expand, it would be one day when the girl starts dating, when the girl, gets a male boss somewhere along the way as they grow up. However, the interaction between the dad and this girl child won't really be so different from the interaction between the girl child and the mom, except for the gender specification, where daddy will teach the girl how to, bring flowers for the child, open the door for the child, speak about sex, speak about boys with the girl child. And generally when say for instance, now they're adolescents, explain adolescent stuff with the girl child. However, if the child is a bit smaller, the mommy can also be rough, and daddy can be softer.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
I love that, that you say that sometimes we don't have to play these gender roles when it comes to children. For instance, in my son's 1-year-old birthday, my cousins bought him a gun, right? A plastic gun. So I was like, okay, thank you so much. But I haven't allowed him to play with that plastic gun because I don't want him to think that that particular instrument is related to masculinity, right? So I've found alternative ways to play with him. But also, it's like I've watched the mother hug my son and I'm like, I also want a piece of that. I want to also play and hug and kiss and, be more intimate physically with him. So it doesn't have to be that, we have to be rough and tough as fathers. We can also have these gentle ways of play.
And also there is an increase of most fathers being present, most fathers bringing their children, their teenagers, their adolescents, even 3-year-olds, 5-year-olds for therapy. So play therapy does help, interaction between parents, whether it's a mom or a dad with the child, will have a benefit, will have an advantage ultimately. Hence, mommy will have a position and a role as a mom, and daddy also will have a position and a role towards the child's life. However, when you speak of play, for instance, if it's a child that is about 11, and the dad is a police officer, I'm just giving an example. Okay. Because of daddy's job, how daddy's cognition is wired, it would most of the time overlap onto the child at home, where dad would be much rougher, expectations maybe academically in terms of this is what you must do. Whereas mom will come in and say, oh no, let's try to learn mathematics. Let's see, this is John, now it's play, right? This is John. John has 3 apples, Sandra has 5 apples. Let Sandra and John play. And ultimately the child's mathematics will improve. But that is also play. But there is no manual in terms of, unless if it's in therapy, where now the psychologist will have certain choice, certain technique, certain approach to the therapy space based on the reason for referral, why the child is referred for play therapy. But at home, both mommies and daddies, it's psychologically, cognitively, it's more beneficial when the child gets a bit of both worlds.
Absolutely. Well, before we wrap it up, I think there is a huge importance for obviously men to be in their children's life. And we struggle a lot with that. It's a little bit of an issue, especially here on the African continent with, dads who aren't present. And even though there isn't a particular role and roles can come in whatever form, what is that importance of that child interacting with the father just as much as they do with the mother? Because there's also the societal misconception that as long as the father is taking care of the child financially, his physical presence is not as needed. But it is, isn't it?
It is. Definitely it is. One, a sense of self, a sense of being, a sense of identity more than anything, especially like I mentioned, when they get to teenagehood, adolescent, they will call it daddy issues, but a child definitely needs a father's presence as much as they need a mother's presence for the sense of self. Who am I? What am I about? Where do I come from? And as children learn through observations, they will learn that this is how my daddy does things. This is how my daddy treats my mom. This is what my daddy does for us. This is, generally the role and the position of a dad to provide, maybe to create security. But more than anything, daddies play the biggest role for the child's identity. Who am I?
Well, it's so powerful that you left it there on a good note, that it's all about identity. Julia, thank you for joining us and giving us your time. Are there any spaces on social media where we can find you?
I'm on TikTok. I forgot, the admin takes care of that.
Okay, cool.
But otherwise, I'm on mobile as well. Yeah.
All right, fantastic. We'll look for Julia Mathabathe on TikTok. I'm going to go on TikTok right now and I'm going to friend you right now. So I'm sure I'm going to find you there, Julia. But thank you for joining us here on Channel Africa.
Thank you so much.
That's clinical psychologist with special interest in children, Julia Mathabathe. That conversation takes us to 11:30 Central African time. Let's move on. Let's get our sports update. Wrapping up things for the morning is Musibu Dimakura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African perspective.